Welcome to my morning coffee. Always bold, hot, and full of flavor. Gia and Tonya are my morning coffee. What's in your cup?
Oh, you moving this morning, huh?
I'm trying to move a little bit, only because I can't because I'm so stiff. But I was trying to get a little shoulder action.
Hey, one shoulder, dude. So listen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are logging in from. Welcome to another edition of My Morning Coffee, where the conversation is always hot, bold, organic, and full of flavor. I just found out that our conversation this morning is going to be incredibly hot and organic. G always got some stuff going on I don't know about. But before we bring on our guests, which clearly many of you know, and I don't, maybe that's a Bay Area thing. I don't know. Y'all be treating us like we're second class citizens, but whatever. What's in your cup? What you been up to, mama?
I got coffee in my cup. See my cute cup? Yeah,
Ooh,
got
cute.
coffee in it this morning.
That's cute. What have you been up to?
Yeah, this was a gift. This was a gifted to me for a late birthday present from one of my friends, actually, who was also on the department. She's a captain on the department. Miss Angela Walton gave me that as a birthday gift. So yeah, what have I been up to? Not much really. This weekend was kind of a slow weekend for me. I didn't do much. I did go to a homegoing celebration for one of our sorority sisters, Tonya, Soror Beatrice Nelson. Her homegoing service was Saturday. It was a very, very nice service, I must say. It was really, 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 really nice. And just to be there, because we've been in this pandemic and haven't been able to see a lot of our sorority sisters in a while. So just being out and getting to see some people that I haven't seen in over 2 years was good. Sad that was under the circumstances was under, but it was good to see them. And everybody seems to be doing well, looking good, and stuff. Of course,
when you say it was a good service, what does that mean? Because some people might like the melodrama that comes with funerals, and did someone throw themselves in the casket? Like, what was
when I said it was a good service, okay, it was on time. It didn't go long, but that's not why it was a good service. It was a good service, I guess, to hear, to hear all the great things about Soror Nelson and the people that came that spoke on, about her. It was really good. They had somebody from her neighborhood where she lived talk, and actually that person was a retired sheriff. Sam Dacus came and he spoke about her because he lived on the same block with her and her, her family. And then she had somebody from the Women's of Distinction. They spoke, and then of course, the sorority spoke, and everybody who came in contact with Soror Nelson had something really great to say about her. But just listening to some of the stories, it brought back a lot of memories from back, when, back in my younger days in the sorority and stuff, coming through and stuff like that, and how she was as a person and how she was as a soror, and when she was around, she meant business, and she kept us on our P's and Q's. And she was the epitome of what we call final womanhood, and stuff. So that's what I'm saying. It was nice in that aspect. So yeah.
Good.
So no, nobody threw themselves in a casket. Wasn't nobody, no drama, no, falling out, and all that stuff that you normally see at Black people's funerals. But no, it wasn't none of that going on.
There wasn't anyone making the day about them.
No, it was about B. Right. It was about her, and it was nice. So it wasn't a sad weekend for me, attending that. It was really good. So yeah. So that's all I really did this weekend, and trying to get these ailments. These ailments, they coming on me like a storm. So right now I'm nursing these shoulders, both of my shoulders now. Both sides are are giving me some problems. So I just been resting and taking my medication that the doctor gave me. Yeah, so yeah, that's it. What about you? I saw that you were out and about. You were looking cute though. I must say, you was looking cute in your gear. I saw you was rocking some mahogany box stuff this weekend. So
You know,
yeah.
my weekends have been filled with baseball. I've learned that I don't work on weekends, and it's really irritating when people call about work on weekends. If people work as hard as most of us do during the week, allow people their time during the weekend to spend with their family. That is the only time I get with them, actually, because during the week it's a hustle and bustle. It's a go and it's a pick up and drop off and school calling and the district is calling and LA County. And, there's so much going on. During the weekend, I really just give myself to them. So it was a lot of baseball, which was cool.
Yeah.
There was a lot of traveling going on in the family. Ray came back home with back spasms. He couldn't walk. Royce had pneumonia. Roman was just beat up from all his traveling in baseball. And then Talia was just being a preteen. So I always need a break from that. But
so you must
that's
got
all it was.
you
And you
must
saw
got
coffee
yeah. So you
in
must
my
have.
cup.
Well, you must have more than coffee in your cup then, because all that you had going on.
Actually, I'll tell you about this cup if you can see it. It's the Saks. How do I get it to
It's kind of
work?
blurry,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
10,000 small businesses. So, Goldman Sachs, they actually run a program for small businesses and helps them to level up. So, Ray's second company is actually a part of that. And, we get a bunch of swag and stuff. So, learning a lot, get to learn a lot too, and help with some of the stuff that we do. So yes, it's coffee in my cup, but it's black coffee. Okay. It's like black, double caffeine because it was a long week. And speaking of a long week, since we announced the guests that we're having today, I've been getting emails and calls for the last couple of
Yeah.
days. So we have tons of questions for this person.
I'm
I
I'm
feel like
excited, y'all.
I feel like he's kind of a local celebrity.
Well, yeah, he is, but y'all, I'm excited. I'm excited, but I'm nervous too, because y'all, he used to be my boss. Um, so yeah.
And it ain't too many people that get Gia tongue tied, so this should be interesting.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, but I'm glad to have him on. I can't wait to hear from him and hear what he has to say, because I'm sure he has a lot to say, because he's a man of many words. So that's for sure. But the conversation, it should be good. I hope we got some good questions for him, and let's just get into it. Let's talk about it.
Before I bring him on, though, I do want to make sure that I am clear about where we stand in regards to being active in local government. And, as riled up as people get about what's going on in DC and all the clickbait politics that happen to go on, understanding what happens at a local level is incredibly important. And voting is important. You want to vote, but have an educated vote. Know who you're voting for and what they stand for. It's really, it just makes no sense to complain about things after they have happened, but you didn't take an active role in making the positive change that you wanted. So instead of all of the complaining that I've heard about with LA County Sheriff, we're going to bring on someone that's actually running for that top spot and brave enough to show up to my morning coffee to answer some questions. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him on. Hello, sir. How are you? Mr. Cecil Rhambo, chief of the LAX department, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. LAX and Van Nuys, yeah.
Oh, and Van Nuys.
Right.
Okay. So are they
Hello,
combined, or are you just doing two jobs? Because I know that there are people, let me see, Manhattan Beach and Redondo, that have both run two departments at one time. I mean, there was police and fire, but I see that y'all can do multiple things. So are those departments combined, or are those two different agencies?
Yeah, LAX used to, as well as Van Nuys. So Ontario went back to Ontario, and now we just have Van Nuys and LAX. And Van Nuys is the largest general aviation airport in the nation. So it's a pretty big and busy airport out there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let the people know what's in your cup. Do you do you have something in your cup, and what have you been up to?
Yeah, I've got black coffee, just like you, in my cup. I just actually went. I was invited to a conference in out in Palm Springs to address independent cities. You know, there's over 450 cities here in the state, and then here in Southern California, they have a group called Independent Cities, comprised of a bunch of cities that are all networked together. So I sat with the Glendora chief, and we talked about dealing with rising spikes in crime. And how we deal with it on a larger level from my perspective, and on a smaller level on his perspective. So and then running for office, that's taken up the lion's share of my time.
Why? I want to know why, because, and this is important to me, because you're in a position right now where people love you. Like, I've heard nothing bad about you. And I just want to know why somebody would get out of a comfortable seat, a seat that they're clearly doing well in, and jump into the hot pot we know as LA County Sheriff. Because since I've lived out here, it seems to have been an agency that's been plagued with disdain from the community that they support. So I want you to talk to me about that. Why would you get out of what you're doing now and move into this hot spot?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is there's never been a more qualified person. Let's take away the fact that I'd be the first African American in the seat ever. No one has actually run for this seat with the level of experience that I have, the broad-based experience. So I've got almost 46 years of public service under my belt, and started in the mid 70s, and spent 33 of that in the sheriff's department. But I've also stepped away for almost a decade. And in that period of time, I've run two cities. I was a city manager in Compton, as well as assistant city manager and interim city manager in Carson. And now the chief of police in LAX. And so I'm one with this huge, broad-based experience, not only in law enforcement, but also in public service delivery as a whole. Why would I do that now? Because the window of time is important. Timing is everything. And at this point in time, given the COVID, you've got the war coming on now. We don't know what that's going to bring in terms of how it affects us here locally. I have some premonition of how it will, because I get some intelligence reports at the airport. But I can tell you that the sheriff's department is very large, very complex. Everybody running except for me, even including the current sheriff, have less experience, and they really don't quite understand. They haven't sat in the hot seats like that I've had over the years, and really worked with the community, developed programs. I've been dealing with the homeless over 20 years. I ran the Hate Crimes Task Force, worked with Human Relations Commission, won awards for creating anti-hate learning platforms to junior high and high school kids that's still in use to this day. So I just have a lot to offer. And I think, at the end of the day, you guys were talking about the funeral service. While I could just go off and retire, the real question is, what do you want people to say about you when you're dead? And did you give back? And did you have that opportunity? And you, Gia, you may not know this. I'm adopted from an orphanage from Korea. So for me to even have this opportunity, coming from Compton and South Central, where I grew up, is just really a tremendous blessing. And I don't want to, give that up. And I really have a lot to offer.
I want to jump in. I want to say, Chief Rhambo, because I'm going to call you Chief today. That I did know that about you being adopted, but I want to say what you touched on. You talked about your experience in law enforcement and having the most amount of experience, and that's important. I think people lose sight of that, and I think in this last election, people lost sight of experience, and I think it was more based on popularity or who was the least popular, as opposed to and then the most popular person. And I don't think people, when they went to vote, they were casting a vote based on the experience and the knowledge that the sheriff would bring or needs to have to run a large department. And you do have that experience. You have worked a lot of places. You worked a lot of places within the department during your tenure there. So I do know that you are. You have what it takes, and you've been around and you've done things, and you've been in the hot seat because you were in the hot. You were around when I guess when some people say the fall of the sheriff's department with the whole Baca and Tanaka thing, you were around during that time, so you probably had the best seat in the house as to what was going on and not going on, as opposed to all the things that we saw and heard in the media and everywhere else. So that is important, is experience, I believe.
I want to ask you, piggybacking on that, with all of your experience, we're in a moment right now where we're watching the Supreme Court hearings, right? And it's been said over and over how Black people need to be not just qualified, almost overqualified to get certain positions. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like you are almost overqualified and there is something even greater for you? Like, talk to me about that.
It's interesting you brought that up. You're the second person who's asked me that particular question. But to specifically answer the question about whether I, as a Black man, feel like I have to do 120%, where someone else may have to do 100%. Sometimes, yes. I think that if I were, and I don't want to make this sound, racial, but I will think if I were a white male, or even a Latino male, or someone other than Black, with the qualifications that I have, with the years of experience, I think things would be completely different in terms of how people would be more motivated to support me financially as well as come out. But I can tell you that whether I feel like I'm overqualified for the position of sheriff, I think I'm uniquely qualified for the position of sheriff, specifically at this point in time, given the issues that we really face here in Los Angeles County, and even at the state and at the national level, in terms of like dealing with the homelessness, law enforcement reform, and those kinds of issues.
I love that your background.
Here's a question for you. This is really about, given our current sheriff, and he has a very adversarial and sometimes some would say belligerent relationship with the board of supervisors. If you were elected, how would your relationship be with the board?
Well, I mean, I've worked with the board before. I used to get yelled at by the board with the sheriff when I was in the department. So understanding the policymakers, I mean, people really need to also understand the sheriff is elected at large by the whole county, as is the assessor and the district attorney. So we should be considered peers. The board does control the sheriff's budget. However, there is a matter of general respect, some decorum and some dignity about how you communicate with those policymakers and those other elected officials. My relationship with the board will be collaborative. We may not always get along. I don't anticipate always getting along or even agreeing. But I do know how to be, how to disagree without being disagreeable or antagonistic or even belligerent, and sometimes verbally combative and insulting. I think his behavior is just less than professional, and it really it degrades the status of the position that he holds.
As a PR and branding professional, I try to get law enforcement organizations and other civic organizations to see themselves as a brand, right? Understanding that their job is really to communicate to the public about the dynamic work that they're doing in those communities, how they increase quality of life for the residents that they're supposed to be providing services for, right? I have an old LASD employee that says LASD needs a UAS at each station, also a communications professional or PIO designated to each station. Tell me, and for the listeners, what is a PIO? What is a UAS? And why would she say that they need one? And do you agree?
Well, the public information officer, so what she's saying in essence is that there needs to be someone that actually communicates the positive things that are going on at the stations. And so I don't necessarily think that that's something that's mandatory, because what I plan to do is make sure that the captains and the command staff of each patrol station, which is only one small aspect of what the sheriff's department does, that they understand community engagement, that they get trained in community engagement, community collaboration and communication, as well as community organizing, and working with all the various stakeholders in those communities that they actually service. So they become part of the community, even though they may not be from Malibu or Compton or Antelope Valley, but they need to understand the dynamic and the character and the morals and the values that the community actually has out there. And then sometimes they may not entirely agree with those values and those norms, but understanding what is it that we're communicating, and then listening to folks. Working in Compton, I was a captain out there when we took over the contract. And to this day, that is the only contract that you actually have to take that to a vote of the people to get rid of, because of all the communication, all the community collaboration that I did out there, building youth programs, working with intervention workers, working with moms who, quite admittedly, their kids were gangsters and they got killed by gangsters. And so they became grief counselors, embracing those kinds of out of the box concepts, which at the time, the term progressive didn't exist. So, I was being called the hug a thug chief and those kinds of things. So marketing those kinds of behaviors, I think, is important so the community understands that.
Hug a thug.
That's what they call me.
They didn't know him, Tonya, because he don't come across as no hug a thug. So that's funny.
That's funny. It is funny. As a resident of LA County, I appreciate what he's doing, but as an employee, I had to leave for a reason. Freezing of hiring, no hazard pay for COVID. This person says her situation was unique, but it is something that I have heard from LA County Sheriff employees in various different departments, mental health department, in the jails, that they're not really taken care of as employees. They're not treated well. What do you say to that? And what do you intend to do about it if you were selected for this position?
Well, those are all labor issues, right? So I have a lot of experience working with labor and the various labor unions. And one of the things that you have to have, and I want to establish, is a Bureau of Labor Relations. And so listening to what the employees' needs are. I was at a labor rally just last week and talked to some employees there who work in inmate reception. And they didn't have basic things, like they didn't have pens and paper, and their chairs were not, they had old chairs that were really hurting their backs and things like that. So, those are the kinds of things, again, my experience having been a unit commander and then a city manager and at the high levels of management, understanding that those lower level management people, if I'm the captain of inmate reception or whatever the unit is, there needs to be a communication line so that captain, he or she, can communicate that up to fiscal. We need pens, we need paper, put it in the budget. If you don't understand budget requests or how to get things done through fiscal or through administration, that's a whole nother problem that leads to these kinds of employee neglect issues where they don't have enough PPE or no one's listening to what their needs are. And so those are the kinds of things right now. When you look at the sheriff's department, he fired all the top brass. So he came in as a lieutenant. So he didn't even know what he didn't know. And then he fired everybody that did know something. So part of the problem is teaching people how to be command level personnel is going to be one of my top priorities. And I'll have to become what's ostensibly called a training officer for the executives on the organization, just so those kinds of things do get addressed.
So I want you to kind of go uncensored with me for a little bit. Talk to me about your childhood and your family, and how did you wind up in law enforcement? You were adopted. Okay. What was your childhood like? And then what would make you want to do law enforcement?
Yeah. Well, look, I don't want to overshare too much. I'll say this, I came over I was born in 59. So I got here just before 1960. My parents were in Compton. They'd been there 10 years. And my parents were both born before 1920. So they were older parents. And my dad was in World War II. So these are greatest generation African-American people who grew up in a separate but equal America, quote unquote. Staunchly Democratic, not necessarily super duper Afrocentric, because I can tell you my parents are from Texas and I never even heard of Juneteenth, right, growing up. So, and my dad's family goes back to Texas, to Austin, Travis County, like right after the Civil War. So they were there. so I thought that was interesting. But my dad only had an 8th grade education. Substance abuse issues. I think because of the substance abuse, there were some mental health issues. I'm not proud to say that. I saw some domestic violence issues and things like that growing up. When I went to Humboldt State. And I chose that college not because, well, one, I thought I wanted to be a forest ranger, but the other thing was I wanted to get as far away from LA and that family situation as I could. I'm an only child, and it was a little bit of mentally abusive and kind of. I mean, the first person I pulled a gun on was him, actually, my dad, but as he was assaulting my mom. But I'll tell you this: my mother, strong African American woman, taught me a lot about values, work ethic. Patience, maturity, how to treat women, how to treat people, and really the work ethic that I have. So, growing up in the 60s, during the real pro-Black we saw Martin Luther King. I was around for the 65 Watts riots. I saw gentrification happen. Went to Washington High in South Central LA. So I've seen a lot growing up. I knew Stanley Tookie Williams, that kind of thing. So the question about why I got into law enforcement, it wasn't an accident, really. I came out of college and applied for LAPD, the sheriff, and New York Life Insurance, and my mother was like, when the county called me for, and I was a county lifeguard and put myself through college with that. So. So I worked with the county, and so I thought, let me go with the county benefits, that kind of thing. And my mom's like, why do you want to be the police? I'm like, even though she'd seen my dad fight with LAPD in our house and all that stuff, she's just like, it's like a cultural thing amongst us. It's like, F the police, you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
But I really wanted to I've always been that kind of, I'm a Pisces, so I feel everybody's pain. So I'm like, let me go see if I can make a difference inside the organization. And so I joined, and the rest is I just learned to just love the work.
Chief, I'm a gun violence survivor. Witnessed a murder at the age of 5. I spent time in a federal witness protection program. I did some research when I started writing my book about the crime. I found out that Kamala Harris's office helped to keep him locked up. I also found out that the person that committed the murder, had previous arrests, and he likely should have stayed in jail and definitely should have never had his hands on a pistol again. So my question to you, especially while we're in a time where crime is rising, violent crime is rising, gun violence is rising, what is the fix? How do we keep those that really do need to stay behind bars? How do we decrease gun violence? And how do we bring down some of this violent crime that's going on? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I was faced with these same issues in Compton when we took over their contract. It was very violent in Compton, a lot of things going on. And what I found interesting is that there's a level of normalcy with the type of violence we see in our inner cities. It's kind of like that's a normal. And I found myself going to town hall meetings and fully anticipating people to just rail about the violence and the shootings, and they complained about traffic. And that's what led me to realize that people had started accepting this level of violence as just normal behavior and like nothing they could do about it. So, one of the things that I did is I really worked on intervention and prevention programs to, really deal with at-risk youth, created youth centers, did a weed and seed site that was federally funded, out of Wilmington Arms area. Gun violence stuff, I understand. Like people ask me about working with George Gascon, and and George is a former cop, and I've known George since I had hair and his hair was black. But I will tell you that I don't support him not using gun enhancements, because what that does, to me, it lets a perpetrator realize they can use a gun without any extra consequences. And I want people to think twice about that if they're going to perpetrate a crime. And I think it's part of an overall gun safety policy. The other thing is I want to really address ghost guns, which you can 3D print a gun now. And so that comes with legislation. Maybe we might look at, so back in the day when we were finding people cooking PCP, what we did is we regulated the types of elements or the material used to create PCP. Same thing with guns. If you buy a 3D printer, maybe you should have to register. If you buy certain materials, certain polymers, maybe you should have to register those polymers. And then making sure we're working with these gun shows, not only in the state of California, but outside the state of California on, guns that are manufactured that don't have serial numbers and those kinds of things, and make it a felony to actually a felony and a federal crime to transport those weapons back and forth across the border. So dealing with gun violence is something that is going to require all of us, and then making sure that we have a good public, again, the PIO, public information campaign about gun safety, weapon safety. I know the sheriff has given out a bunch of CCWs. I don't think necessarily issuing CCWs makes us safer, particularly if you're not familiar with having a weapon all the time. So I think it really requires a number of things: legislation, regulation, enhancements to sentencing. And again, when someone keeps recidivating and they keep coming out, there's these algorithms for that. I think people really need to take a look at and move away from some of the facts that people complain that the judicial system is unfair to us as Black people. I fully understand that. I get that. And I want to deal with that before it even comes to that. But once they commit violent crime, I don't care what race you are, right is right. And people are afraid and they don't want to have to, live in witness protection. And I don't care what race you are in terms of that. So I think we need to really look at some factual data and work on the real problems based upon that.
So CCWs, what can you tell the people? What is the CCW?
Oh, concealed weapons permit.
Go ahead, Gia.
I have a question for you from, and this is probably for the line staff that on the department right now. And the question is, if you were elected sheriff, what is your plan to boost the morale with the personnel on the sheriff's department?
Well, I think a lot of it is what you guys touched on earlier. Making sure that you guys that the team gets their hours, wages, and working conditions are improved. So your wages, we're already working on. You guys are already working on your union negotiations. I've spoken to Jim Wheeler and SEIU and for the professional staff. So I know what people are asking for, and I think you deserve that. I think you deserve the hero pay that came down from the federal government. People that had to be frontline workers. I think you deserve a higher a cost of living raise. I think you guys took 0 last negotiation rounds, so that should count for something. And then taking a look at, as healthcare costs go up, let's take a look at the county absorbing some of that so it doesn't come out of the employee's pocket. And then listening to employees about their concerns. I think one of the biggest concerns is being able to hire because they're being drafted on overtime. They can't go home. And the extra money is nice, but after a while, your health is more important. So making sure we really can try to address getting folks in the door, hiring people, and it's a tough environment. A lot of people don't want to be law enforcement, particularly under this current climate. And even working as a healthcare worker or any other part of the professional staff can be somewhat challenging, not to mention the background process you have to go through and things like that. So it's making sure you get more money, making sure you get better fringe, listening to your concerns, and then making sure that we can fill some of those vacancies just to kind of, like you said, you want your weekends off. Imagine not being able to have any weekends off, or having to be drafted and locked in for 16 hours and you got kids to pick up and things like that. That's just a really, really tough environment to work in.
As a county commissioner, I'm on the Alcohol and Other Drugs Commission. And one of the most important things to me is really starting to deal with our youth and their addiction to substances, alcohol and drugs. And it's just out of control. I'm over here campaigning to bring back Gruff, the crime dog, or somebody, because we have to start having these tough conversations with these kids. And I know I live in beach cities. There was an article that came out when I first moved here, and it talked about parents that do drugs with their kids. That is like a real thing. And I'm blown away by it. What are your thoughts on, in the largest county in the nation, dealing with some of these drug issues that really are just, it's out of control, but we can't criminalize it? we can't criminalize everything, particularly addiction. But how do we get it before it becomes addiction? How do we kind of get involved before it gets to that place? And I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, obviously, as Democrats, you mentioned while we can't criminalize, we fought the war on drugs and allegedly we lost it and those kinds of things. So I understand that dialogue. So dealing with the drugs ahead of time, we have to make some admissions about the messages we're sending out there. If you smoke a cigarette, you're completely frowned upon. It's socially unacceptable to smoke a cigarette, but it's completely socially acceptable to smoke marijuana. People are really openly lobbying for legalization of all drugs based upon some of their, I guess, not deep dive understanding of how it's done in the Netherlands or how it's done in other countries. So I think when you talk like that, you're also encouraging people to, one, let them, even younger people, let them know, yes, it's okay to do these drugs because we support medicinal marijuana, regular marijuana, and the legalization of stronger drugs. I hear the thing about psilocybin or mushrooms coming up. I think we really need to change our conversation about that and talk about, the dangers of doing these drugs, the number of deaths that happen from these drugs, and then letting people understand that there has to be, at some point, there have to be consequences. Now, there doesn't have to be jail, but I can tell you that if I am sheriff, I really want to work with the judges, the judicial system, as well as rehabilitation services so that if you do come to county jail, that you are mandated to get into a rehab and detox center. Because what's happening now are people are being arrested and then they're being turned right back out into the street. They haven't even had a chance to get some good nutrition in their bodies, detox from those bad drugs, deal with the fentanyl and all these other methamphetamine and all these things that are going on with them. They can't even think normally because they're in this cycle of addiction. Getting them before, maybe having people who become addicted who are now rehabilitated come and talk to the kids. We've had all of those kinds of programs, but I think we really need to take a look at how we say things about drug usage, because right now it implies that, if someone's saying all drugs should be made legal and it should not be criminalized, you are not only subconsciously sending a message that it's okay, you're overtly saying that it's okay. And quite frankly, it's not. And I don't support legalizing all the drugs.
So we have a viewer that said you can't mandate rehab; it doesn't work. So let's talk about what does work. Maybe it doesn't. What are some of the other alternatives? And let's have that conversation, because I grew up in a house, a whole family of substance abuse. And the crazy thing is, some of the people that were abusing drugs, they still around now. But some of the people that had started using drugs recently, I don't know what's going on with these new designer drugs, but folks are dying like their first or second time doing it. So clearly, substances have changed. Maybe that's a conversation. And then who do we have that conversation with? Like, who's listening? And how do we really impact what's these current trends with overdosing and these current trends of addiction and kids born with addiction? Like, get a little deeper for the people about your thoughts on some of this stuff. Because if you come from a home with substance abuse, as I do, all of this stuff sounds good, surface, but the truth of the matter is it's going to take more than that.
Well, I think, I humbly disagree with the person who says that rehab doesn't work, forced rehab doesn't work, because if you don't push someone, first of all, people with substance abuse, addicts, they won't generally get help on their own. And I can just tell you from my father's perspective, his issue with drugs and his love affair with alcohol and drugs, he just was not going to go and get help. The only reason he got help for a very brief period of time was because he was mandated by the court so he could work to go to AA. And for a very brief period of time, it gave him an opportunity to for substances to come out of his body, to get him some better nutrition, because, you know, they don't eat properly. There's a lot of things going on. So we can have a conversation about that. But I'll tell you, I'm certainly interested in really taking a trip to other countries where things are working. And I can tell you that in these other countries, everybody wants to talk about Amsterdam, for instance, or the Netherlands. They don't, while it's not a crime to actually, use these drugs, if you get caught, they do cite you. And if you get a warrant, they do arrest you and they mandate your rehab. And I don't think people really understand that. People just think, oh, they didn't legalize the drugs and the problems went away, because they tried giving needles away. They tried using methadone. They tried all the things that, the harm reduction programs are doing here. But I really wish that people would go and look at what the best practices are in totality, not just part of it. Because clearly what we see now is not working. There are people literally dying on the streets, and that is really inhumane.
The caller, one of our viewers, said that it doesn't work. They've tried it many times and not until you're ready. And I have to agree with both of you guys. And me too, Tonya. I come from a family with substance abuse, but rehabilitation is important and we need to have it. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't happen. You're not successful with it until you're ready. But if we don't have these kind of programs, these things out there for people to get rehabilitated, then where are we? Where do we stand? So rehabilitation is important, and I think it does work. And like Chief Rhambo said, because I've worked the jails and I've seen them come in there, and he's right, they don't stay long enough, and we're sending them right back out the door, and they haven't even fully detoxed, and they're right back on the streets dealing with the same stuff that brought them there. So I think having some kind of programs that puts you in rehabilitation if you're arrested for drugs is something that we do need to have and should have. And I think we should also, when it comes to the youth, Tonya, we need to be educating these parents, because a lot of these parents need to be educated on these drugs and the drug use, because everybody now thinks all this stuff is cute, and I was out this weekend and just seeing all these people just out, like you said, smoking weed like it's a cigarette, and it was just, I'm just like, we've come to this, it's just like, and it's not a good look to me. I don't care if it is legal or whatever. It's just, it's not. And you got people that are they're using marijuana for everything. Oh yeah, I got this ailment. Marijuana helps. You got pregnant women smoking marijuana. It's like, and it's like, really, you have a child inside, but you're smoking marijuana. Oh well, they said it was okay. Well, who's they?
Well, there's a lot of money being made in jail. I really want people to understand, when you talk about the parents, about 26% of the kids out there don't have parents. They're either raised by a foster parent or a relative. And so those are the things you really have to address. And so when I work with transitional age youth, the TAYs, working with folks out in that genre, in that community, you realize that you really need to have mentors, and the mentors have to be around long enough. They can't do it, one weekend and go away. Parenting is a lifetime thing, just like mentoring young people. And so having those mentors that are responsive, that are there consistently, that's going to be really important, particularly in our community. And another thing I realized, having worked with rehab programs and reentry programs, is that people who have gone so far down, lost their family members, lost their homes, lost their jobs, they have a tremendously low self-esteem, and they don't feel like they're worthy. And so you have to build all that back up with them. And so those are the kinds of things that I think are vitally important in terms of creating a whole person. So my job is, as a sheriff, is to make a person better when they come back out than when they came in.
I want to take you to one of our other big problems in LA County, homelessness. Many times that's kind of mixed in with the addiction and criminality, and we don't want to criminalize homelessness, but we have this problem in LA County. Talk to the audience about your thoughts about homelessness, about some of the solutions that you have conceptualized, and how it all plays into each other, the holistic approach to LA County Sheriff's Department.
Well, let me talk first specifically about what my plans are as the sheriff to deal with what I can do in terms of staying in my lane. And then I'll talk about some policy issues that I would consider lobbying the governor as well as DC for. So as a sheriff, we process about 2,000 people a week in and out of the jail. The question is, the ones that are being processed out, are they being processed out back to homelessness? Have we done jail in reach with our homeless service providers, with our mental health professionals, our drug rehab folks, to make sure that when they do come out, when they do discharge, that they are discharged out to some place to go, and are they being case managed? I think that's going to be something that I really, really want to make much more robust, which kind of ties into the whole discussion about mental health issues, rehabilitation, and things like that, as it relates to the homeless. Let's look at our civil management unit. Civil management is the unit that when the judge says, okay, Gia, Cecil, you guys are evicted because you haven't paid your rent in the last year and a half, and now we're out there homeless. If I know that there are folks that are going to be evicted, I want to have a team, a housing team. I've already been working with my former housing specialist over in Compton, who ran our Section 8 program, to really do some jail or some in-reach to, not jail in-reach, but in-reach to these people in the civil management unit who are about to be evicted, to make sure that they can be evicted out to some place to go rather than to homeless. So that's what I really want to do as the sheriff dealing with, the homeless population as it relates to me specifically. Policy-wise, I think that we really need to take a look at, just like they always ask you to take a look at the root causes of crime, and they want to talk about systemic racism, they want to talk about socioeconomic injustices, things like that. Well, let's look at the root causes of homelessness. For years, we listened to the fact that, facts that by the grace of God, there go I. I'm one paycheck away from being homeless. That's probably true for a very small percentage of the people. The chronically homeless that we see now, because I've been dealing with them for 20 years, the vast majority of them have at least two morbidities, meaning they're drug addicts and have mental health issues. And you don't know which came first. Did they become mentally ill because they were doing the drugs, or were they mentally ill and then they did drugs? Until you address those issues and get them better, the concept now, even homeless advocates, the real staunch ones, don't want to build shelters. They believe that everybody's entitled to a place, an affordable place to live. Well, I don't know that any taxpayer is going to say that if you're a drug addict, you're mentally ill, we are obligated and responsible to pay for your housing for free. We have Section 8, we have Section 8 programs, but I think that what's vitally needed is really for us to take a look at what are the root causes of homelessness. The ones that are one paycheck away from being homeless, or maybe they got evicted or whatever, they have services out there and they're willing to take these services. I can tell you, having talked to the homeless out there, the chronically homeless, it takes a minimum of 14 touches. Would you like some shelter? Would you like some help? Before they even accept it. And I understand the issues behind it, because the shelters don't allow you to stay overnight. You can't maybe you can't bring your dog. Maybe you can't bring your 8, grocery baskets full of stuff that you think are your personal belongings, which we know is trash. You can't do all that. So, those are things that we have to overcome. But the reality is, by leaving them on the street, we're literally allowing people to die on the street. We're loving them to death. And I think that's wrong.
Did you say stay in your lane? Are you assuming that someone else does not stay in their lane? Is that what I heard?
Well, no, I'm just saying, because you mentioned early on, why wouldn't I run for a greater office? But, I've gone to the mayoral debates, so I think it's important for the sheriff to really look and see what these mayors and these supervisors are, what agendas they're pushing, and so that we can either be in sync or we can have some robust discussion about how to implement plans, because everybody wants to address homelessness. The real question is, what are the policies that are going to be in place and what's going to work? And I want to do the things that are going to work. And if it doesn't work, let's change the channel. I mean, if you don't like it, let's do something different. Laws can be repealed. They can be amended. Let's do something different if it's not working. And let's go look at some best practices. Let's go to Europe. Let's all go take a trip to Europe, look at their system, see what works. And as quiet as it's kept, the Netherlands has a robust immigration policy. Now, we can't keep people from Nevada, from other parts of the state, from coming into LA County, which another thing is a large percentage of people come to California because we give them things. We incentivize them to come. And as compassionate as I like to be, at some point, I'm a parent. I don't even love my kids that much. I'm not going to just let them keep doing whatever they want to do and keep paying for that. That's just not going to happen, because if you do it, they're going to keep doing it.
There was a time when slavery was legal. It doesn't mean it was right. So I want you to tell me something that's legal right now in LA County that you don't think is right.
Something legal in LA County that I don't think is right.
Yeah.
I don't think about that. I wanted to say that I don't think it's, we have this, while it's technically not legal, it doesn't sit well with me that we allow people to just live wherever they want in the streets. I think it's environmentally hazardous. I think it's unsafe for the person living in the street as well as people who live in the community. And we've somehow grown to accept that, particularly during the pandemic. And I understand why, but I think we've kind of inadvertently legalized it. And I'm certainly not advocating criminalizing the homeless at all. But I think we have to really make some moral and tough decisions on what is the right thing to do for the greater good.
And with that, I know a large portion of our homeless and substance addicted population are vets. Is there a way that LA County Sheriff's Department could be working better with vet services in a situation with like our homelessness, or just to problem solve better? Because a large portion of those that are displaced, underemployed, undercared for is our vets.
Yeah, I think what I would really, so if I'm sheriff tomorrow, one of the things when they talk about reimagining or reallocating funds from law enforcement to other services, I want to make sure that we can create a program inside the sheriff's department that has a homeless outreach unit that's large enough that reaches across multi-jurisdictional and collaborative service providers, the vets being part of that. And I think it's vitally important for us to have a connection with the Veterans Administration on how we get services to veterans that are legitimately vets and who are entitled to certain benefits, because there's money entitlements that come along with that. So having a team, a person that is assigned to that is important, rather than someone, because a lot of times you'll call and you don't even know who to contact, right? If you have an established unit or bureau that does that, then that makes it all the more easier to coordinate those efforts.
Know, like, and trust. You want your public to know, like, and trust LA County Sheriff's Department. How do you make that happen?
Day to day, day by day, interaction by interaction. A lot of people are just going to naturally not like the police. And like it or not, as long as you have legislators and lawmakers, somebody's got to enforce those laws they write, right? So realize that we all come from the community. I'm literally from the community. I know the department is about 52%, Hispanic, Latinx, and they come from the community. Realizing that those people in those uniforms are kids who grew up in the neighborhood, kids who grew up there, who really want to do well. From my perspective as a leader of the organization, I have to emulate some behaviors that I want the deputies to do and reward them for those behaviors and punish them for the ones I don't. Deputies that are rude, nonchalant, officious, maybe abusive, verbally assaultive to people, or just, smart mouth, dispatchers. Dispatchers, people forget when people call the police department, they're calling dispatchers who are not sworn law enforcement personnel. Those folks are stressed out. They need training. Customer service delivery is really, really important. And when you look at the airport, I tell my officers, look, we are the front door for the world here in Los Angeles. People come from all over. And so you're an ambassador, just like the guest experience people, just like the counter people. And people come from countries where they really, really fear law enforcement. So we have to make sure that they understand that we are completely different from the law enforcement that they come from in their other countries. So understanding that, understanding how you do service delivery, communicating with people, in all instances, they may not have to wear their uniforms. I mean, we dress down in softer uniforms, particularly the guys working, the men and women working park patrols where they're dealing with kids and stuff. So how we look, how we interact, encourage them to get out and play basketball with the kids or throw football or hand out Frisbees or whatever it may be. Encourage them to interact with the community, even in custody, even in the jails. Hold those town hall meetings because those folks are going to come back out to the community and those relationships can be built inside that custody system.
You know, Gia's over here just shaking her head and smiling and all this. I want to know, because this comes up often, is people when they're, you know, they're looking to be elected, they say all the right stuff. They give you all the good stuff, all the great sound bites. I want to know from Gia, is this the person that you've always known? So you talk to the audience and let them know, has he become someone else? Is this someone you've known for a while? Has he always been this person? Because many times people want to know, look, I want to vote for you. What you said sounds good, but I don't know if that's just something you're saying now or if that's who you are.
No, I've been knowing, I'm gonna call him Cecil now. I've been knowing Cecil, Chief Rhambo, for a long time. And this is who you see now is who he's always been. He's always been a straightforward, direct person. And he's always been fair. And that's what I've always admired about him. He's fair. He listens. He takes what you have to say into consideration, and he does investigate. If you tell him something, and he will look into it, and he's just not going to tell you he's going to look into it. He's going to look into it, and if something needs to be corrected, he's going to correct it. So this is who you see is who I've always known him to be, even though he left us and went on over to LAX. But you know, he's still the same man that I met and known for over almost 30 years.
Lord, listen, yeah. I don't know.
Look, he met me when I was a baby deputy.
Well, let me say this: the things that I'm telling you guys are things that I've actually done. All the candidates that are talking, even one of the younger ones, lieutenant who came to us from Compton PD, they're only going to talk to you about what things that they want to do. These are things that I've actually done, and I know how to get them done. And so, as Gia mentioned, you know, I've been in this game a long time, and I understand it. I understand people. The most important things that I want people to understand is, you know, voting for me is not voting for the sheriff of LA County. You're voting for a partner, and I want the department to be viewed as a partner in the community, because overall safety is really everybody's responsibility. I want to partner in that.
I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Larry Wallace from up north. He was California's top cop for a while. He's kind of like you know, very well decorated. He's done a lot. He worked for Kamala, very, you know, stern. But I've had the pleasure of seeing him loosen up a little bit. When do you loosen up? Like, where's that party at? I'm trying to get invited. Who are you when you're not, your tie ain't tight and, you know, you're relaxing, you're with your friends? Like, who's that guy?
So that guy, I'm kind of, I have a lot of friends. I know a lot of people, but I don't have a lot of friends. Let's put it that way. And I'm kind of a loner type a little bit. I'm social, but not crazy social. You know, I'll go have a cigar every now and then. But I wouldn't say crazy athletic, but I do a lot of working out and a lot of travel. I'm the kind of guy who'll take a backpack, literally a day pack, fly over to Hawaii, stay in a hostel. In fact, I was staying in a hostel when the airport called me for the job I have now. Just chilling out, hanging out with some young folks, and just, you know, wearing flip-flops and just working out every day. And, you know.
Tonya, he's funny.
Really?
Yeah. See, yeah, he's funny. You know, right now, he's Chief Rhambo, running for candidate for LA sheriff, but you know, he's a funny guy. He has a lot of, if people don't know, he has a great personality. He has a sense of humor, and he will crack jokes on you. He will.
Oh, is that okay? Well, clearly you need to be somewhere else. Listen, you've already talked about and allowed me to petition for the crime dog to come back. What about Pal? Since you did say that you like sports and you like, you know, being sweaty out there, can we get something else for the kids? Like, I need some robust answers for our young people. I am just not hearing that. It is disappointing. It is upsetting. and our kids are hungry for fun and socialization that is drug-free and nurturing. And so Pal, what can we get the police athletic league or something
Oh, yeah.
going on here? What?
Absolutely. So I worked I think Gia knows this. I put the boxing center that's in Compton there. And not only is it boxing, it also had a skate park before the skate park was built, basketball courts, music lab, computer labs, that kind of thing. I've done it in the Willowbrook area as well as up in Antelope Valley at Jackie Robinson Stadium in Little Rock. LA is really big. And then remember, as a city manager, I ran a Parks and Rec program over in Compton and in Carson. And so making sure that your Parks and Rec programs are really robust and that you have them staffed fully and that you have some really robust programs. And you can look for the funding. There are a lot of philanthropic organizations that give to these programs. Those youth programs are built not using taxpayer dollars, and they're supported by, people that donate to those foundations. Worked with LA Dodgers, bringing back a renovation of Jackie Robinson Stadium in Compton. Compton has a 2-acre campsite that if I'm sheriff, I hope to adopt and then bring back so kids can learn how to camp and do campouts and those kinds of things. And we could do leadership, getaways there. There's a urban horse equestrian in Compton and other parts of LA County, but inner city, not thinking about the Black Rodeo and those kinds of things, bringing those programs to the kids. And then also on the youth front, working with the Workforce Investment Board on getting kids jobs, making sure working with these city councils to ask them if they have any money to provide youth summer employment to keep kids out of trouble, get them their first little jobs, those kinds of things. And that's how I started out, right out of high school, working for LA County Parks and Rec as a lifeguard, and it put me through college. And that's how I've been in public service since '76.
That's what we need. We need those youth jobs back again, because some of these youth that's coming into the workforce, they have had any experience in doing nothing. So I think bringing that kind of stuff back would be great. So I remember having that when I was young, getting that summer job, through the city and stuff like that. So that's very important. So hopefully, if you're elected, you can do something about, getting that back.
Well, you work with, there's a man named Jan Vogel who works in the Workforce Investment Board in the South Bay. And so there's programs that you have to be familiar with. None of the sheriff's candidates have this experience. I have firsthand experience getting kids. We used to pay the kids to teach them how to write resumes, how to do interviews. And I'm sad to say some of them wouldn't even come back and get their check. But I will tell you, those opportunities were there. We got them those opportunities. Same with people coming from reentry. There's a program called the Transitional Subsidized Employment Program, where we paid business owners the salary of that person coming out of custody to work and get them the job skills. So understanding the bigger picture of how to do this overall public safety umbrella without going to arrest, I think is important. And none of the other candidates have experience doing that except for me.
I love that. So let the people know how they can keep up with you, support your campaign, be a part of it, and just, keep up with what you have going on and maybe stalk you and find you when you're laughing and giggling or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, they can check my website out at Rhambo for Sheriff, RHAMBOFOR sheriff.com. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all those places. Certainly, donations are important. You can donate as little as, $1 or $10 and just do it recurrent. Money is the mother's milk of politics, which is why when you guys look at people who get elected, whether I'm the most qualified candidate is beside the point if I can't get the word out to the 10 million voters here in 4,000 square miles of LA County. And it takes money to do that. It's not just having a campaign headquarters here or this is a $2 million plus race, and it's very, very expensive. So, the financial support is really important. Spreading the word on your social media is really important. And then certainly, inviting me to go talk to your groups, send the email over to my campaign people and I'll come talk to a group and introduce myself personally now that we can kind of get out and talk and see each other.
I love it. So you guys hear him. He's accessible. He's obviously someone you can talk to. He's open to your questions. So ask the questions that you need to answer to feel comfortable coming out and casting your vote one way or the other. it's important. So we want to thank you. I've enjoyed this conversation. I enjoy when people make Gia speechless and get her all googly eyed and all that stuff. So that's always fun. But once you are a part of the My Morning Coffee family, you're always a part of our family. So if there's something that we can do for you, keep us posted.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you guys for having me this morning. And good seeing you again, Gia. I haven't seen you in a while, and get healthy.
Thank you. Good seeing you as always.
Okay.
Take it easy. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay.
What'd you think?
I think it was good. It was excellent. I enjoyed the conversation, the questions he answered. Some of the questions I had, he already answered through answering some of the other questions. But he is very qualified, and like you said, he's done a lot. He's sat in a lot of these seats and stuff, and that's one thing a lot of other candidates don't have that he does have. So we'll see.
I think there's some people in the public that like what they have now, but there's definitely more of the employees that I've talked to that don't like what they have now. So listen, if y'all don't like what you have now, you have options. Get educated, get registered, and make sure you can vote.
Yes.
What do you have coming up, Miss Gia?
Nothing. I'm gonna be trying to get these shows. I have some doctor's appointments coming up. That's about it. Yeah, I'm gonna rest to try to get back healthy, as healthy as I can get. But that's about it. What do you have coming up?
A few things. Make sure you stay connected on social media. Tonya McKenzie PR and Sand Shores, all social media platforms. There's a lot going on, girl. I ain't even got time to go through all that. But Diana Beckham, up north, she is currently the Contra Costa County District Attorney, and she is running for re-election. So I'm supporting her campaign, and yeah. So
I don't have anything coming up, but I do have my collection on Shein.com. So I need y'all to go to Shein.com and click and buy some of those t-shirts and tank tops and everything, and sell the collection out. That would be so cool if we could sell it out. But yeah, that's one thing I have really coming up, going on. Tanya's my collection that launched this week with Shein. And,
hopefully my shirts that I ordered will be in, and then maybe I'll put on a little fashion show for Mahogany Box and Shein. I don't know if my stuff show up on time. I might give y'all a show.
All right. So yeah.
All right, you guys, take it easy. We'll see you back here soon. Have a great rest of your day, and stay connected.